Hello everyone, I'm here with the last of the long list of the Warwick Prize for the one in 2094. So this long list has 15 books and I have read 12 of them. I have not read Holy Winter by Maria Stepanova. I have not read Too Much of Life by Clarice Lispector, and I have not read White Nights by Ursula Honeck. The reason for this is that I have read both Maria Stepanova and Clarice Lispector and did not enjoy anything that I read from them. Some of them I actively disliked, so I didn't want to read them. And then White Nights by Ursula Honeck I was a little more interested in, but the book was quite difficult to find here, and I just didn't want to spend the money on something that I think is poetry, short story poetry, and the topic did not appeal to me either, so I decided to not do that. But everything else I have attempted. I have DNF'd one book, and that's the first one I will talk about, but we will go through that later. So on average, the long list got 3.04 stars for me, and the short list had 2.75 stars. So it was not, also the winner I didn't like, so I think these judges were not in tune with my taste, which sometimes happens. But yeah, I still did discover some interesting books in this list. So I'm going to go through the list from the book that I like the least to the book I like the most. So as I said, the first book that I'm going to talk about is the one that I DNF'd, and that's actually also the winner of that year, and it's Revelation Freshly Erupting by Nellie Sachs, which is a collection of poetry about the Jewish experience. It is fairly based on the long-term Jewish experience of Holocaust and stuff like that, rather than the more recent Israeli things that are happening, at least the parts that I read. But yeah, overall I was just not into the poetry. It was very twisty and very metaphorical, and there was a lot of references to David and like the traditional Israel, like the land, the promised land and stuff like that. Things about Jewish culture that I was just not into. So it is really, really not for me. I'm not into poetry. I'm also not particularly interested in religion. And so this was just not my kind of thing. So I didn't. The next one in the list I'm going to talk about is Kairos by Jenny Eppenbeck. This was about a young girl and an older man in Berlin, and it's kind of their love story in a way. And I liked the atmosphere of Berlin. It was around the time when the wall came down in the 80s, and so I liked that dichotomy of the East versus the West and how different things were perceived. But the characters in the story were just not something that I was interested in. It was a little bit like The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera, and also the writing reminded me a bit of Sally Rooney, like the way the characters were annoying. And I don't love Sally Rooney. So yeah, this was just not for me. I can understand why other people like it, and it has gotten a lot of praise and a lot of prize attention, because also Jenny Eppenbeck is a pretty famous writer. But for me, I have read other things from her, and I'm just not into the writing. Sometimes some of the stories click more than others, and I think we are in a similar wavelength when it comes to politics, but yeah, not really my thing. The next one in the list is Mariana Circa by Gracia Teleda. This is a very classic book, so it has only recently been translated, but I think this was from early 1900s, 1915 or something like that. And it is that kind of story of that kind of time. So it's about a woman that is fairly wealthy, and she falls in love with the help, one of the servants, and they want to get married. And everyone is scandalized about it, basically. That's the main story of it. I like some of the conversations that it had about why she would fall for this person, and based on how she was educated, and if it was really love and it was just a way of rebelling, and if things would have turned out different if she was allowed to do more things and have her own ideas when she was growing up. That was an interesting conversation. And the writing was beautiful. But yeah, the story is a very classical one. And I'm not particularly interested in super classical stories like that. So again, a book that was just not for me. The next book in the list is Death of the Red Rider by Yulia Yakovleva. And this follows like a very small kind of not very important detective in the police that is charged with looking into this case of a horse and a rider of the horse that died, that they were very famous ones. And he kind of goes there it almost felt like someone from the village that goes to the big city. He didn't have a suitcase, so he had to ask all of his neighbors to see if someone had a suitcase that he could use, stuff like that. And it was the character was somewhat endearing. There was some funny commentary on how the Soviet Union works. But yeah, other than that, it was a lot slower than I would have expected this kind of mystery books to be. And it was not as captivating as I was hoping it to be. It was a lot more interested in the smaller details, and some of them were funny and gave atmosphere, and some of them were tedious. So it was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. Next one I have is Yogurt and Jam by Lena Berger, which is a graphic novel memoir of the author's mother. She was German. She moved to Lebanon for the father of this author, but she stayed in Lebanon, and she became very Lebanese in her traditions and culture, the way that she acted. That was part of the appeal for her to move to Lebanon. It was just not about this guy, it was also about the sense of community in Lebanon, which is much stronger than India. Also talked about the war, so she moved, I believe, around the end of the Second World War, and then when she arrived to Lebanon started to have a war, and so it was just moving from one war to the other, and all these difficult times for these people, and how she stuck all of that up for so long. And I found that the story could have been interesting, but the way it was told, it was very stream of consciousness way. There was not a lot of structure in it, and it just felt very disconnected. It was also felt a bit surface level. It was mostly about the things she cooked and the traditions or the routines that she had, but not so much about her feelings and her inner world. So I was missing a little bit more about that, and I think it could have had a bit more depth. The next book I read was The Factory by Hiroko Oyamada. And this is a very short book that follows different people that have different jobs within a factory, and many of them are bullshit jobs. They are jobs that don't need to exist, but exist so that someone can do them, almost. Another aspect that this book talks about is that when the company gives you benefits, and these companies that have a gym and a canteen and all of these things, you get out of the company less and less, and so your world shrinks to the point where you think all of this is normal, and then you give the power of decision to the company rather than try to go out and expand your world and have a bit more agency. So all of those topics were very interesting, and I think there should be more discussion around some of these things. But the way that the story was told was not the most engaging. So even though I enjoyed a lot of the commentary, the story was not the point of the book. The next book I have in the list is Edo's Soul by Stella Gaitano. This is about this woman's several women in this remote village in I don't remember where in Africa, in some country in Africa. I think it was like South Sudan, maybe. Basically, at the beginning we follow the mother of the main character, if you would say. And she's a very quirky, interesting character, and I was really interested in her. And then after a little bit, the perspective changed to her daughter, and her daughter was not that interesting for me. I liked parts of it. I think that there were some really interesting characters in it, and some discussion about different traditions, things like that. But also, like, the second half of the book lost me a little bit because I just found the main character not very interesting. The next book in the list is Greek Lessons by Kang. And this is about two people that are very interested in Greek as a language, and one of them, the man, is getting blind, so it's an added bonus to all of this, and the woman is dealing with a lot of family issues, and so we kind of follow both perspectives, and at some point they kind of merge when they become a thing. And I thought that the writing was beautiful, and it was interesting to see like the way the story was trying to be built up. However, so it changes perspective a lot, and it's not clear when it changes perspective. It doesn't have headings or anything that tells you it's changing perspective, so you have to keep figuring out as you read. And it took me a while, and at some point I was more focused on trying to understand how the story was built and the story itself. So it did lose me a little bit on that sense, just because the story first of all was not like super interesting, but also there were so many other elements trying to build the story in this super interesting way that the elements just took over and didn't catch my attention with any of these elements. So I think it was a very well done book, but it was just not as much my kind of thing. The next book I read was Mild Vertigo by Mieko Kanai, and this was about a mother that had two children and like very standard typical life that she's supposed to be happy about, but she's not happy about. She's growing more and more dissatisfied with how small her world is. And I think it was very interesting to see her go through that process, to feel the emptiness in her life, and the helplessness that she has because she doesn't know what to do about it. I also liked the writing. It was very matter of fact in the way that she was describing things. It was not overly descriptive, but there were very long sentences that gave sort of like a rhythm to the book and the writing. And it was almost like stream of consciousness, but not repetitive, that sometimes is, or anything like that. So I thought it was a very interesting way to tell this kind of story. The next book in the list is The Hunger of Women by Marosia Castaldi, and this is about a woman that her husband died, and she now feels free to explore her sexuality. I don't know if you would consider her lesbian or bi, because it's never clear from the book if she really loves her husband that much. But she basically is talking about other women, and one of the way that she connects to other women is by cooking for them. Food is a huge thing in this book. And there's also the element that she has a daughter, and the daughter starts feeling jealous of these women, the way that they get the attention and the love of her mother, the way that maybe she feels she doesn't as much, or it's taken away from the love that her mother is going to give her and the food that the mother is going to give her. And honestly, when I first saw the what the book was about, I thought it was going to be like a kind of this woman finding out her identity as a lesbian, but she fully knows that when she starts the book. She just wants to explore it further and enjoy it further. So that's more of the focus of the book. But I really enjoyed it, and the descriptions of food are so lush and so nice as well. Yeah, I think the small conversations that come out of this are very, very interesting, and I really enjoy the way that it was done. The next book in this list is Sleepless by Marie Dariussek, however that is pronounced, and this is about insomnia. It's a non-fiction book, and the author kind of explores her own insomnia, but also insomnia of other people, her friends, and some other people, and like a little bit of what's behind all of that, and try to explain how that feels. And it's not about sleep hygiene as much. It's just something that you have to deal with, and how crazy you can go from it. And doesn't also mean that you're not tired. It's just very frustrating, and it comes across in the book as that. And I really enjoy the way that she described it, because I had never looked into it in detail, and it was very interesting to see like that perspective. At points it was a little bit repetitive, like the author might just make huge list of the different medications that different people are trying to combat insomnia, different remedies, different things, and it's very repetitive, but I think that's part of the point, because insomnia is that repetitiveness as well, and that frustration, like I'm trying so many of these things and none of them are working. So that was interesting to read about. And the author is also from the part of France that is like the Basque country, so there were also some mentions about that, which I personally found nice, because I'm from the Spanish side of, you know, there are a lot of common things, and I enjoyed reading about those things, which I don't see very often. And then the last book I want to talk about is Ædnan by Linnea Axelsson, and this is structured like an epic poem, or an epic saga kind of writing from the Swedish tradition. And it's divided in 3 parts, and it follows different women in this family, this Suomi family in Sweden. And so it's kind of following the hardships that they are going through. So in the first one, it's just about this woman being part of a herding community that are trying to survive. In the second one, we see the next woman kind of trying to fight the building of a dam in the region by Vattenfall, which now is supposed to be this very sustainable energy company. And then the last one is like this lawyer trying to fight for retribution for the Suomi people. And I just thought it was very well done in form, but also in story and in the topics it talked about. And I just found it very powerful and very, very strong. So yeah. That's the list. I enjoy some of them more than others. I think this set of judges was not the kind of set of judges that I personally like, have a lot in common with, but I still found some really interesting books. And yeah, that was it. I'm doing one more video going through the stats of the whole project of the Warwick Prize, and looking a little bit about the conclusions that I can draw from it. But other than that, I guess this is a project done. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have read any of these books and if you like them or not. And until next video, bye!